What's happening, everybody? Welcome to the Deep Dive with Nick and Dave, although Nick is out again, and we're so delighted to have Jarrett Wallace back with us for the second week in a row. We had fun last week.
Yeah, we did.
Ready to have some fun this week, Jarrett?
I am, absolutely.
All right, let's get going. Let me start off by giving y'all an update on Nick and his mom. If you watched last week, or if you remember here at Hickory Flat, you probably know that Nick's mom has been the recipient of a lung transplant. They're up at Vanderbilt University Hospital. But I'm glad to say, happy to say, good news that she's doing super well. In fact, she has now moved into some housing that's close by so that she can come back, several times a week. So she has to have a caregiver with her to do that, to sort of watch over and get there. So, Nick will be back and forth from up in Nashville when he takes his turn doing that. But this week it's not his turn. And so he was able to, and weren't sure if he was going to be able to, but he's able to go on fall break with his family. I'm not sure where they were going, but they're going somewhere. And I hope they're having a good time. So, Nick, if you're watching this, hang in there, bud. We miss you and look forward to you being back. But let me welcome Jarrett once again.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
And so
I'm excited.
Is this y'all's fall break for where you with your kids?
Forsyth County is next week.
Okay, that's right. You live in Forsyth.
Yep. So next week is our fall break.
Okay, so the plans? You going someplace?
We're going to the beach. I haven't taken vacation yet this year, so we're going to.
Awesome.
I'm going to shut everything down: phone, email.
All right.
Everything.
Yeah.
Facebook.
Yeah. Do that. Yeah. That sounds like
I'm just going to lay low for a week.
Yeah. So which beach?
Atlantic Beach, North Carolina.
Okay.
It's where me and my wife are both from, and I've vacationed there every summer, almost my entire life. The same beach.
That's right.
So it's grown a lot over 40-some years, but it's pretty cool to go back home.
Well, nice. Well, we get to see family there. Your
I'll see my in-laws.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have in-laws. They live about an hour from there, so we'll see them on the way up.
Yeah.
And then on the way back through.
All right. Well, good. Well, welcome back again.
Thanks.
We had fun last week. It was a great job. Got great comments, and it was fun talking with you about last week's text and last week's sermon. So we'll dive right in and do it again. Thanks again for watching.
Yep.
Just to give a little review, we're in this message series called Practical Lessons from James. Each week, I am looking at some major themes that are throughout James. We're not going through it verse by verse expository. We're just taking major themes. And so we get this week to another major theme, which is the whole thing about faith and works, and sort of balancing that in our lives. And so title of the sermon was Faith That Works. Mm-hmm. And I guess that there was one, he said several things about that. He talked about, faith without works is dead. He talked about be doers of the word and not just hearers only. Had lots of things to say about that. And we kind of forecasted this a little bit last week, that this is an interesting, I think, kind of type. I don't have any trouble with it, balancing it. But there's some people that will look at James and say, well, James is just, says the opposite thing, for example, that Paul says.
Right.
Because Paul was all about grace, and at different points in history and different context, people have kind of read James harshly at times. One of the biggest being Martin Luther, the great Protestant reformer. He said of James that it was an epistle of straw.
Yeah.
And even doubted whether or not it should be in the New Testament. But he was coming in from his context where people were like paying money.
That's right.
For their salvation. You got to be saved by your baptism, so here's a fee to the church. Mm-hmm. And they had indulgences where you could pay for your sins.
Right.
And so you want to get forgiveness of your sin, pay a fee to the church.
Right.
And you could even do it in advance, So before you went to North Carolina, if you're going to be blowing it out, you could.
They do like Apple Pay or anything?
Yeah, they do Apple Pay. Yeah, they would now.
Yeah, they wouldn't. They still don't.
But that stuff had a QR code up in the.
It's not. That's not a.
It's like. Oh, wow. The church has come a long way.
Yeah, yes, it has.
I'm not sure that all of it's great. But anyway, so that's sort of kind of the debate that goes on with James and, say, Paul. But, we have to really look at what it was that James was saying at the time. And basically, I used a big football example, start of football season. I'm really into football season.
Yes.
And that is that, like, a lot of us for football, we're fans,
Right.
and we like to go to the games. We like to watch the games, like to put on the jerseys, do all that stuff. But, you can be a fan and not, the players are the one doing the work. And so it's easy to be, are you a fan or are you a follower? I think was the question that I was asking. And so James and Jesus wanted us to be followers, not just fans. In fact, I don't think you can be a fan and really be a follower of Jesus. You have to be a follower. A lot of people try to live their life that way.
Yes.
And be Christian in name only.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's really what we're getting into, the be doers of the word and not just hearers only. And so one text I wanted us to unpack a little bit. I'd love to hear your ideas on it. I didn't get to this. There was so much I could have pulled from. I didn't use this particular part, but it's from James 1:22-25. And I used part of it, but not the whole thing. You must be doers of the word and not hearers only who mislead themselves. We'll come back to word in a minute. But he uses this example. He says, those who hear but don't do the word are like those who look at their faces in a mirror. They look at themselves, walk away, and immediately forget what they were like. So what do you think old James was talking about there? What's that?
I mean, I think it's like short-term memory almost.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you know what your face looks like, and you look in the mirror and so you confirm that, yeah, I look like that.
Yeah.
And you walk away, and then something else is, kind of like squirrel, and you're off to something else, and you've forgotten what your face looks like.
Right. And I think in our context where we have mirrors everywhere.
Everywhere.
So we should know who we look like.
Yeah.
Back then, maybe it was a little bit more difficult. They didn't have mirrors everywhere. In fact, only rich people would have had mirrors at all, and they weren't like mirrors the way, I don't know how a mirror is made, but however they did that with glass.
It's glass with a film, yeah.
Yeah. But they just had like bronze that was really polished up so that you could see a reflection.
And it was distorted. I mean, you're
distorted,
like a funhouse mirror.
Yeah. That's why maybe Paul uses that in Corinthians, the distorted glass, that, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, but like, as I was researching this, the word there, the verbs that they're using, it means to look intently at. So who looks intently at themselves and then walks away and forgets who they are. It's the same that's used in the Gospel of John when the disciples are running to the tomb and John gets there first, which he is quick to point out.
Yes.
And he looks intently into the tomb.
Right.
We're really looking at looking and seeing what's going on there. And so it is that sort of thing that if you look intently at the faith, if you look intently at Jesus and the Christian life, then, if you walk away and forget that,
Is it looking intently but not forgetting it, just not acting on it? Is it more that, or is it forgetting it?
I'm not sure what his intent was, but I think it can go either way. Yeah, because I think he's saying those who don't do the word, so it's not acting on it.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, it's not acting on it. So, when I was a kid, sometimes when I was leaving the house as a teenager in particular, my dad would say, "Don't forget who you are."
Right.
And, I'm Dave Benson. But what he was talking about was like behaving myself because, if he broke that down, and he might have at some time or another, he'll say, you represent, our family, you represent Jesus, you represent the church.
Right.
And so how we act, represents the church. And so I think there's part of that there maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, your actions dictate who you are.
Right.
To the outside world, maybe not to yourself because we have these masks we put on, right? But to the outside world, you are what you do.
Right.
It defines you. For right or wrong, it defines you.
Right. So so that's very important. And so we see with people that may be fans and not followers, are people who may be quick to say they're a Christian, have the bumper stickers over it, but live in a very different kind of lifestyle. Yeah. Not that they're just like living like, however, we would define sin.
Right.
But they're not representing Christ in just their attitudes and their actions and the way they represent the church. And so I think James is saying, we need to be doers of the word and not just hearers only, who show up and know all the right Christian language, but you would not know unless someone told you that they were a Christian, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've met people like that before. I mean, just even in the business world or just in the secular, they're just mean as snakes. And then somehow the conversation veers towards personal life in these conversations. And me and my wife go to mass or church every Sunday, and you double take. You're like, what?
You're stunned.
You just cussed that guy from Saturday to Sunday.
That's right.
Around the whole week. And
Yeah,
you're telling me what? I mean, just now you're just confused. And you're like, what?
Yeah,
What's going on here?
but that's business. It's not business. It's not really.
Oh, yeah,
I don't let my business life, get into my personal life. Well, I think
my
James,
religious life.
I think James is saying, it should.
Yes.
It should. And because why I've not had a trouble, I think, being able to balance the faith and works thing. I mean, although I will say it's a rail to, with how we talk about it, because I think, and I may count myself a little bit in this, is like understanding the grace that you've been given, that you don't have to earn your salvation.
That's right.
There's nothing we could do with that. It's a gift that's been given to us. And so as a result of that, we should be doing good works. But I do see people that are like, Jesus, thank you so much for forgiving me my sins. And, I'm going to make it up to you. I'm going to make it up to you. I'm going to work. And I don't think they truly understand the forgiveness and the freedom of the grace. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's the adage everybody uses, too good to be true.
Yeah.
It usually is. And I think people grab that sometimes and go, God's grace is free. I don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
No, that's not possible. I got to do something to earn it. I can't, or I feel like I'm obligated to earn it or give back. And where that is partly true. Yeah. You don't have to give back, but you certainly can.
Yeah.
As part of that grace that's been given to us freely.
And so, it does sound like a little bit of a contradiction, though, with the fan and follower things. I do think people that have put on the name of Christ, and they say, all right, I've prayed that sinner's prayer. I'm saved now. I can do whatever I want to. I can live however I want to, and
that the once saved, always saved thing
and
rolls around in our circles. Yeah.
Right. And so I think James is like speaking up to that in their life, as opposed to Paul, which we'll get into a little bit. Paul is responding to, because James, as he is writing, it's very early on. It may be the earliest thing that was written in the New Testament.
Yes.
That and Thessalonians, there's a couple that are debated, but James was very early on. And Paul's letters were a little bit later. And Paul was writing after a time when there were a lot of conversions from different areas, not just Jewish people.
Right.
James is writing almost exclusively to Jewish people. And so when he says, be doers of the word, not hearers only, there was a word and there was an Old Testament law. But he was also the word, and I'm not sure they fully understood. I think we talked about that a little bit, but the word that's used in John's gospel when he talks about the word becoming flesh,
right,
and dwelling among us. So who was that word? Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't. Do you think that they would have connected those dots this early? I mean, I don't know.
And we didn't have that. Yeah, because like a lot of things that we take for granted, the theologies that we have say of the incarnation,
right,
say of the Trinity, they're still being formed. And I'm not sure to what point they were and how much of it was just sort of like understood and just common knowledge. I mean, I don't know how a lot of that came to be, because I can only look at it from the side of history,
right,
Christian history that we look at it from. So I'm not sure when that just was like, I've heard about things like the Trinity as they talked about it. It was just so implicit in even though the word Trinity is not in the Bible, it just, the teaching of it is so implicit, particularly as Jesus, lived his life and became, a part of the discourse, that it was a pretty easy thing to say.
Right. Like,
and it could go that. So they gave it a name, the Trinity, even though people already kind of believed it. They just didn't know what the name was. Here it is, Trinity. Yeah. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Here it is, Trinity. So, I don't know, but living out the word. And so, we were talking earlier, and you were talking about like, what word are you living out? And I think you used a good example, Good Samaritan, when we were talking earlier. So tell me.
Yeah, I mean, you had the, I think most of the listeners know the Good Samaritan story. You have the priest, the Levite, and then Samaritan, and somebody been beaten up on the side of the road. And a good Jew is going to follow the law almost above everything else.
Right.
And even though part of their law was to, ingrained to help others. It was that was the Jewish custom, and their laws were good things for them to live by. But they had taken it so far that this priest and Levite are walking on the road, and they see the guy beaten up on the side of the road, but law prevent them from helping him because then they would be unclean, they'd be impure.
The cleanliness laws.
Yeah, they couldn't go to temple for how many days was it? I think it's after you touch somebody, it's impurity.
It's got to be 7 or 40.
I think it's I think it's 7. So they couldn't. So they were like, oh no, I can't do that. And so they had to choose at that moment in a split second, the law or am I going to live into the spirit of the law, which I think was ingrained in all that. Well, I know it was. And they chose the law.
Yeah.
And like the Pharisees are hearing this going, what's the problem?
Well, yeah, I don't see what the guy
We're
did wrong.
keepers of the law. This is perfect. I applaud them. They did great.
Yeah,
What a good Jew.
And so I think Jesus is really pointing like this is a part of the law that really matters.
This is what we're talking about. Yeah,
the part of because loving your neighbor, that's in the law as well.
That's right.
But it's one of those things where something had been elevated, and it's like I sometimes think, this is totally Dave Benson, not biblical or anything, but just like it just seems to me sometimes it's like God said, okay, here are the 10 commandments, keep those.
Right.
I'm having trouble with those. You didn't get the details. All right, here's some more details. And then like some of the, their writers and the, priests and whatever said, okay, here's some more. And so there's some other books too, and the Talmud and those
this is too simple for you.
Yeah, too simple. Yeah. Here, let's make it like, okay. Clearly you're not getting that. And so Jesus comes along and said, here it is. Let's just distill it down into this one thing. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love God, love your neighbor. Do those two things.
Yep.
And so, right. So how do we, in doing our works, how do we fulfill that great law, the great commandment of Jesus? How should our works be a example of that?
Well, to love God and to really love God, to remember your face, to look intently at your face, to look intently at God, to know God. Mm-hmm. The works, in my opinion, should come pretty easy. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't have to think about. You shouldn't have to make a plan. Okay, I love God. Let me write down these ways I can serve Him and help Him. Well, if you really love God, it's really in your heart. It's really in your head. Mm-hmm. Then that work should be an outpouring of that faith, about that love, and not trying to outgive, not trying to give back, but just for love of God, for love of Christ. That's my opinion. Now, it's not easy because some people are fans and they're not followers, like you said, and they don't see the two connected, or they see one over the other. Yeah. What's this little light of mine? I'm going to shine, hide under a bushel.
No.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. I've got this light, and I've got the light.
Yeah, we're city set on a hill.
Exactly. I'm good.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. But one of the things about keeping the law are keeping the law in serving others. And I use the example of the Queen in the sermon on Sunday because it's a timely thing that's going on. But I do think she was such a great example of service, and as the monarchy changed, I think she saw her role almost, exclusively to serving the people. Yeah. And you could say, well, she's one of the wealthiest people in the world. It's pretty easy. But still, I think she was in a position to be a witness to some things. And, and if you really observe her life closely, you can see, I think she was striving to be a follower, not just a fan.
Oh yeah, I think absolutely. Yeah. As head of the church, she was, we often look to our heads of anything as examples. Right. And she was an exemplary model of service.
Right. And
with little complaint. She didn't complain if she did, it was not very publicized, but.
Right. But even like 2 days before she died, she had to be sick. She was also old. She is active service there with the prime minister,
right,
like two days before it. So, up to the very end, I think she was a great example. It's maybe not somebody that you would think of, as you're talking about like examples of Christian service. If we were doing this a year ago, she might not have made the short list, but now,
right, you're absolutely right.
Now that she's sort of in the spotlight, it's going like, that's kind of what it is. Whatever leverage you have in whatever role you are, whether you're the Queen of England or whether you are, picking up on trash on the side of the road someplace, you can serve Christ in that, where is the attitude of the heart.
That's right.
Recognizing Jesus, who was himself God, who became a servant
Right.
and did things like wash the disciples' feet, which is one of the lowest jobs that you could have.
Absolutely.
And so, I have found, and I know that you have too, I'd love to hear some about it if you think of an example, that sometimes it's in those acts of service where I feel very close to God and I come away with something like, okay, I'm going to go and, do this thing on a mission trip, or I'm going to go set up 10,000 chairs for something. That sounds hard, but I'm doing it for Jesus.
Yeah.
But when you got there's some sort of reward that comes from that. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so. An example that I have is actually probably a counter example because it villainizes me. But when we were at Birmingham,
Yeah.
I took a team to Mexico.
Yeah.
And you remember, all the players that went. It was a pretty big group.
Yeah.
And we were putting a roof on a church in Mexico. And we got done early because it was a big team. So we got done really fast. And so the next job that I think was the pastor gave us was, maybe you can put the conduit in for the electrical while you're here. So I'm like, let's go. And that's my background. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And the team, this is probably at Wednesday. So the team is kind of like, okay, we don't really.
I thought we were done.
Yeah, no, we're finished, Jared. I mean,
This was our task. It's done.
Yeah, we're done. So so I go to Home Depot to get the materials for this new job.
Yeah.
And I get back into the church, and all these buildings are real close together, cinder block buildings, and I can't find the team anywhere. And I'm getting a little bit, a little bit red in the face. I'm like, oh. So I just start bending conduit and putting script into the wall because it wasn't that much really. And I think one of the teammates comes by to get some water or something, and I'm like, where is everybody at?
Yeah.
We got this job to do.
Yeah.
We have this work to do.
Yeah.
And I'm the only one here.
Yeah.
And they're like a deer in headlights, like, whoa, pump your brakes, man. We were over in this rocky soccer field, picking up rocks, took the extra lumber and made gold nets for the kids in the community.
Yeah.
And of course, I feel about
That job. Yeah.
about that big. And at that moment, the light comes on. You're like, oh my gosh, Jarrett, and you're the leader of this team or whatever, right? And Jesus is the leader of this team. And at that moment, that's my realization of this thing is that, it wasn't about the job. It was about the people.
Right.
And my faith and my works got in the way of my faith, which was to minister to these people and just be an example of these people and serve these people with a glad heart. And the work got in the way.
Well, yeah. And I think sometimes we can get the work in the way of relationships.
Oh, hey, absolutely.
Right. And I would say on a mission trip that our relationships with the people that we've gone to serve are paramount.
There they are.
It's what I've discovered. And lots of times I have been on mission teams. It was like people get all, because we're great American, things like, we got to get the task done.
We're going to solve all your problems.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Get those kids out of here.
That's right. That's right.
Those kids. But and I think we can do that sometimes in the church as well. It's
Oh,
just
yes,
like
absolutely.
putting the task or, the program ahead of like the people in the,
Yeah, I think we talked about last week. Martha and Mary is a prime example of that.
Yeah.
I've written a sermon. I haven't done it yet, but I've written a sermon on that text because I'm always preaching about doing.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, do because you're just trying to motivate people.
Yeah.
And then I ran across that text and I'm like, okay, this is contrary to what I've been preaching for the past 3 months. To sit at the feet of Jesus and just be present.
It is a balance.
Yeah, it is.
It is a balance, and and no one does it perfectly. And hopefully, we're all headed towards looking towards Christ, reaching in towards Christ, and becoming more like Christ.
Yes.
And so, as we make this journey, we learn things along the way, and by experiences, and just like I guess maybe Paul writing to this very diverse crowd of people and saying, look, it's not about keeping the Jewish law and because they were the dietary laws and circumcision.
they were going to do it, yep.
and all that stuff. Well, it wasn't necessary either.
Yeah,
it's about grace.
Yeah.
That used to be how you were atoned and got right with God. Not anymore. Your right standing with God is because of Jesus Christ. That's what Paul is writing. That's his major theme. James is like they're in dispersion. They're weighing in the name of Christ, but they're not living very much like it in some cases.
Yeah.
And so he is writing to encourage them, although some of the encouragement that James can be pretty harsh too.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Hopefully I'm looking at some, as I finish up the series this week, I'm looking at some more gentler side of James. But yeah, and then Martin Luther is, sort of the medieval Catholicism that's kind of messed up. Let's be perfectly honest. So
Yes.
he's writing to that. So coming from those standpoints, they've all got their context that they're identifying to. So I think all of us have that as we make our journey. And so there may be a time when, we've been all about work, and God's saying, hey, let's be still and know that I am Lord. Why don't you quit your 25 volunteer jobs at the church and spend some time with me? And so that might be somebody, but somebody else is maybe like they needed some encouragement because all they've done has been a pew sitter, and it's now time to take some acts and find their gifts and work out that. So
absolutely.
I do think it's not an exclusive either or. I think it's kind of a both and that's why we have the whole Bible.
That's right. You got the whole thing cover to cover.
The whole thing, right? Cover to cover, and it's all important. So anyway.
It is.
Well, Jared, this has been fun, man.
It really has. I enjoyed this.
Definitely do this some more. Fun because I've enjoyed sharing this with you, and just always a joy to be around you and Susan whenever we get a chance to break bread together or do something.
You.
So
we feel the same.
Thank you, and I hope you have a great vacation with your kids and stuff. Have a great week, and so all you folks at Hickory Flat, just got one more Sunday in this series, and so we're looking this week. We're looking at humility, and so there's some great stuff that James was big on humility and being humble and that kind of thing. So we'll be unpacking that this week at Hickory Flat. And so if you got anything you want to comment on, you can always send us an email at deepdive@hickoryflat.org or .church, and we'll respond there. And so God bless you. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you in church on Sunday, whether you're with Jared or with me or someplace. Be in church this Sunday. So God bless everyone. Bye-bye.